Excellent. Welcome, everyone. We know that our Brazilian colleagues will not be able to join us today. This happens to be the day on their campus in advance of the start of their new term when they're welcoming all their new faculty. And so that is taking precedent, and I got that information from them. But they will be able to see this fine recording. So I add Eric and my own welcome to the welcome that Stuart has provided. We pivoted and were sensitive to your feedback about, I guess, for lack of a better term, reflection fatigue. And so we added many more what we call knowledge checks spread throughout each course at the end of the topics. But one quick comment about why we had built in originally so many reflective opportunities. And obviously, critical self-reflection is one of the key aspects of transformative learning. So simply becoming facile with that process, one's own self, is important for understanding the learner perspective in transformative learning, but it also allows you to see what prompts good or well constructed critical reflective prompts, what those look like. So with that explanation, we have in the course 2 redo, as well as in courses 3 and 4, there'll be more knowledge checks spread throughout each of the course. However, at the end of all 4 courses, there is, as you would well imagine, a fairly robust end of program critical reflection. So you can look forward to that at the very end. But with that as a welcome and a brief explanation, we're always delighted to meet with colleagues from around the globe around the topic of transformative learning. And one thing that we haven't said yet to this point within at least this forum that I would take note of right now is that transformative learning as an approach to teaching and learning at college, at university, is something that is gaining steam, if you will, in a number of ways. Transformative learning for sustainability of environment, culture, and language is an important aspect of how universities and colleges are engaging with transformative learning around the globe, but transformative learning in general as an approach that is uniquely suited to meet the challenges that universities, colleges, and societies are facing in the 21st century is also something that many more people in higher education are recognizing. So we are happy to have you engaged in this enterprise with us for those as well as a number of other reasons. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kyle. Those of you who are able to participate with us at the end of course 1's webinar will recognize that we'll be engaged in a similar process as we go through this one. So Eric.
Hello, everyone. Glad that you can join us for this session today. Really excited to hear what you've gleaned out of course 2 and to kind of hear your reflections. I have an exciting lineup. It's going to follow a similar format as we did for course 1, if you're able to make that, where we will be kind of just going back over course 2, reading back through kind of the modules and topics. And the purpose there is just to kind of have, bring those memories to the forefront and kind of what were the things that really stood out to you from course 2. And then kind of following that, we'll move you into pairs where you'll be able to kind of share about your experiences, and we'll have some kind of guiding questions for that. And then kind of looking for common themes in your pairs with you and your partner. And then we'll have you come back together as a large group, and we'll have kind of the groups kind of share their themes, and we'll kind of reflect together and kind of try to add to our own each other's knowledge and wisdom that we're cultivating through this certificate program. and then we'll kind of wrap things up this morning. And I am Eric Kyle. I work with Dr. King here at the University of Central Oklahoma I'm with the director of the 21st Century Pedagogy Institute, which is just kind of a fancy name for Teaching and Learning Center. We do faculty development here, and I'm so glad to be with all of you. All right, so should we move into the next part, Jeff? All right, great. So that's what we're going to do now is kind of, as I mentioned, is I invite you to kind of start to think back through course 2, the different modules that you had, the different topics that we went through together. And so what I'm going to do is kind of a slow reading of those modules and those topics. And so as I'm reading through these, the invitation is for you to kind of remember back to some of the different things that you were exposed to. Think back to your own reflections. What are some of the insights that came up for you as you work through course 2? If you did do the reflections at the end of some of these topics or modules, what were some of those reflections for you? Overall, what kind of stood out? What were the key takeaways? What were some of the challenges that came up for you as you worked through course 2? What are the things kind of as you think ahead to your own classes, your own careers as professional educators? What are you taking away with you from course 2? So I want to kind of invite you to kind of center yourself and just kind of allow yourself to be present to what comes up for you as I read through these different module and topic titles kind of in a slow way. Okay. Let's see. So we're going to start with module 1. So that was foundations for transforming courses. And we started off that module with the topic of learning theories that transform. And after that, we kind of moved on to the next topic, which was a view from the learner's perspective. From there, we moved toward embedding transformative learning through the backward design approach. And we wrapped up that module with scaffolding towards student success. Again, what are some of the things that you would take away with you from module 1? Module 2, we focused on life inside of a transformative learning classroom. We started off with a case example of extended practice on punctuated lectures. And immediately after that, we tried to explore and examine together the anatomy of high-impact teaching strategies. And then from there, we moved into thinking about transformative learning in community with our courses. And we wrapped up that module with empowering students themselves to become better learners. And in module 3, we kind of focused a little more fully on critical reflections of creating a path for transformative learning through critical reflections. And so we started that module off with building a bedrock for critical reflection. And then in the second topic, we kind of looked toward how can we adapt in critical ways these critical reflections for our course assignments. And we moved on to thinking about critical reflection across the curriculum. And finally, in the final topic of that third module, we looked at developing critical communities through rational discourse. And for the second course in our final module, we looked at fostering transformative learning, what we call ecosystems. And we started off by trying to identify some of the essential characteristics of these transformative learning environments. And then from there, we tried to kind of examine how do we create a learning community with students. And then we couldn't have a topic on learning environments without talking about transformative learning and mixed digital modalities, some of the different ways that we can use technology to foster transformative learning. And then that final topic was one of reflecting backwards in order to move forward, with this kind of being the halfway point in this certificate program. So what I want you to do is just take a couple of minutes now and kind of, we've read through these different topics and modules. So just take a couple of minutes if you have paper out, if it helps you to jot down, but just kind of think back through course 2 and some of the questions I've already posed. What will you be taking away with you? What were some of the challenges that you encountered in terms of how you think about education, how you think about the classes that you're teaching and your students? What were some of the aha moments that came up for you? How does this impact you, your own identity as a professional educator and your work with your institutions? Let's take a couple of minutes and just kind of reflect on that. All right, so we'll come back together and we'll start getting ready to move into our small groups of 2 or 3. So Jeff, you want to lead us into that?
Absolutely. And I'll follow that brief reflective moment that we had just to make an observation about the alignment between contemplative practice. Dr. Kyle is an expert in that area, but all of us have probably engaged in contemplative practices with our students, and there are formal mechanisms to do it. But what we all just experienced with that reflective moment is one of the kinds of techniques that is a sort of centering practice that can be used at the beginning of classes with students to help them downshift sometimes from their busy lives as they rush into our classes, but most importantly, to try and allow a few seconds to a minute at least for them to get out of multitasking mode and into a focus on the content of the class. In our case right here, as we reflected on course 2, it's simply a parallel process to what can be done in classes with students reflecting on the previous class or reflecting on the assignment that is due that they bring with them into the class. So there are alignments with contemplative practice in higher education, because obviously there's an alignment to critical self-reflection. So with that observation, let me explain how we will at this point move forward. And one thing that we realized when we recorded the last session is that one of Zoom's limitations is that you don't get a recording of all the breakout sessions. There's only one breakout room that could be recorded, and you have to move the camera along with the host self through that process. So what we've decided to do this time is to simply keep the recording running, obviously, but to have this room, this main room, also function as one of the breakout rooms. And so that means that a couple of you, if you would be okay with being in the breakout room that will be where the recording will continue, we thought that that would be very useful for the people who would be watching because they're not able to attend. One thing that tipped us off about this is because our Brazilian group, not being able to attend the first session, wanted the list of prompting questions because they were coming together on their own to have their own breakout sessions after they had watched the recording. So that's why we're thinking it will be good to get a recording of at least one dyad conversation. So I can just call people, but obviously we'd like to take volunteers if folks would be comfortable doing that. Would there be a couple of you that would be fine to have?
I think we had one volunteer. I think, was it Shannon that you said was willing to stay in the main room?
Shannon, you know what? You were volunteered by Jorg. So, because we had asked Jorg if he would be one, he's not able to be here today. But if you would be, that would be lovely. But we are open up for any volunteers now.
Now, honestly, I'm eating my yogurt. So now
Okay.
that's not my plan.
Okay.
If it must, but then I voluntold Angela to be with me.
That is evil.
I don't even know how I ended up in the situation. So here we go.
Yeah.
Together
well,
we'll be awesome. We'll be a good thing. So
Michael has volunteered. So if Shannon, if you're not comfortable, maybe somebody else would like to join Michael in the main room.
if Michael wants to, I will happily bow out. But if I've been assigned.
No, there's not a requirement from Jorg, I can assure you.
Great. So it looks like
How
Tina.
random, how embarrassing.
It looks like Tina will join. Will join Michael.
Cool. Cool.
Excellent. Well, as a reminder about the purpose and what to do, along with some prompting questions, several of which are similar to what you thought about personally, which is by design, obviously, but some reminders when you talk to each other and have your critical reflective discussion in your groups, in your dyads, is first of all, introduce yourself to each other, name, discipline, institution. We hope those are posted already with your name and the country that you're located in. Just as a reminder, those of you who might be in dyads from TWU, you might be able to motor right through that. You probably know each other well anyway. But please, in your discussions, use I statements. In other words, share from your own personal experiences as opposed to making generalizations or trying to take the perspective or assume what the perspective might be of the general person on the street or your students or something else, because these, as are all critical self-reflections, certainly centered on self-awareness, self-discovery, and working through your own perspective. So using I statements can help do that. Also, we definitely are very sensitive to confidentiality. Just as a reminder, especially for the two that are being recorded, if you're not comfortable sharing something, then please don't do that. We want this to be a safe learning space, as all of your classes are. And then you might discuss other guidelines with your partner that are important to you or that you have discovered make you feel comfortable. So certainly this is a personalization process when you have these discussions. And then the reflections and the suggestions that we are going to present right now, what we would ask is that you take a look. I think, Eric, you can post those into chat. We've got a list of several questions, and what is to be done when you have your discussions with your partner is you don't have to think about, oh, we have to get through every one of these questions. You may decide at the very beginning, I would love to share my experience about this particular question. Or you may wind up spending the entire time reflecting about one thing. This is a very free-form exercise by design. And so we have allotted about 20 minutes for this activity. So being conscious of time, if one partner is sharing his or her or their reflections for 7 minutes or so, be sure to switch over to the other partner, because after individual sharing, then what we want to encourage is a back and forth. Or you may find the back and forth is your natural dyad working process. You get the idea that this is very flexible as long as we are focused on the concept of reflecting about what you encountered in course 2, the things that surprised you, any aha moments, as Eric mentioned earlier, and what that can mean for your teaching and learning. So certainly that can go in a lot of different areas. So what Eric is going to do is set up breakout sessions. And let's see, we've got 2, 4, 6.
Yep, I've
8.
got the breakout sessions set up with the 2 people remaining in the main session, which will be Michael and Tina. One of the groups does have 3 people, so we might go a little bit longer, but we have you in pairs now. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. We'll send out reminders to let you know when you have like 10 minutes left and then 5 minutes left, so you can make sure that everybody has a chance to share. And then we'll come back together and kind of bring our wisdom together as a group.
And
right,
one other quick follow-up for those remaining in the main room, which is going to be recorded, Eric and I obviously are going to audio and video mute. And so we will not be flies on the wall. We'll just be hanging around in our office to make sure that we gather everybody back together at the appropriate time.
All right, great. So I'm going to send you off into your rooms and we'll see you back in about 25 minutes or so. Okay, so Tina and Michael, I think are all set to go ahead and get started with your conversations. I'm not sure why Miss Bashir isn't. She's showing up. Okay, there it goes. I think she was having some connection problems, but I think they got it squared away now, so you should be good to go. All right.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Okay.
Hi, Tina. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Michael?
Wonderful. Olgun, can you hear us? Olgun? Olgun, are you
Yes,
there?
I do.
There we are.
Sorry. Yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Excellent, Olgun. So it's, I guess, reflections time for us to think about.
Well, you should be.
Introduction.
Yeah, you should be in room 2, Olgan. Or in room 1. Did you get an
Room-
invite to join a room?
2.
A room 1, I think it is.
Can I do that, or do I need to
Yeah,
get
well,
another?
let me try
Sorry for
bumping you
that.
over to
Oh, I
another
think
room
there-
and see.
Oops.
You should have just gotten a message to join a room. Oh, there we go. Okay, great.
I don't mind the company, but that's okay. Person in room 2 needs him. All right, Michael, let's start.
Yes, Tina, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tina Gummany. I am biology department at Texas Women's University on the Denton campus in the United States.
Tina, I'm in the same university, same campus, in the College of Business, and looking forward to a fantastic new academic year starting in just a few weeks. Just last week, we had the opportunity to visit with the Chancellor and the Provost, the interim Provost, Dr. Finley Graves, and was good to learn about his leadership style and his support for the faculty, among other stakeholders. So I think what I came away with is the fact that he framed it well by saying, what would I want to be remembered when I leave? In terms of answering that question about his persona. I mean, I know he actually said, I know you're not trying to size me up. So I'm going to say, when I leave, you would probably say I was a good listener. I made decisions based on facts and data, and I was accessible. And I think that was refreshing to hear. So maybe he'll be sharing some more at our forthcoming faculty day. But
Good.
Jeff and Eric, I'm actually from UCO before I came to Texas. So I think I was sharing that with them last time. So always a pleasure to visit Edmond, Oklahoma. I get a chance, and I think it's this transformative learning conference is what usually brings me to Oklahoma City and Edmond. still have friends who actually live in Edmond, Oklahoma. That's where the campus for UCO is, which used to be called CSU, Central State. But it was confusing because center of which state is the next question we would get asked. Central State or where? So this UCO, I think, spells that out. Yeah. So Tina, what are your application to biology from the learning and reflection in the first couple of modules here?
Well, I'm thinking about applying the reflection aspect to a senior level course that I teach. I already do something like this for a non-majors entry level general life sciences course, just to get them just to get them to recognize that there is a link between science and what they already know, and who they are and possibly their identity. But for the biology majors, I haven't integrated that, in part because it's a course that I took over from a person for whom the course was like their baby. And so changing it up by introducing more reflection, I didn't want to change it up too much, but I think that I can do that now. And so my plan based on this course is to provide more opportunities for reflection, for making those links between their existing understanding and the new content that they're getting, and possibly more ways to apply what they learn.
That's
So,
excellent. In fact, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, your turn.
No, I was making the link to systems theory when you said that learning by association. That's one of the tenets for us in systems theory, which is, I think it should be, I should state general systems theory that's not particularly information systems or any discipline specific. It's discipline agnostic. And so the application would be, I mean, we learn by association, but for me, whether it's undergrad or graduate students, deep learning is the focus for application of these concepts that I've learned so far, and looking forward to learning from the next two modules, module 3 and 4. But particularly, and I was in a session with Ken Baines, who wrote the book on what do the best college students do, what do the best college professors do, and I think he's got a book coming out on what do the best college administrators do. I mean, the chairs. Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting for, I guess it would be a broader application, starting with the chairs all the way through to I'm not sure if he'd include the president or chancellor, but at least, or I think he should, because really it's we have to set the stage from the top. But nevertheless, the important piece was the deeper learning. In your field, Tina, or mine, in the world of information technology and strategic management, if they have a sense of the concepts that they get to the roots of that concept, I think the application would be far more agile and powerful. So they'll be able to take that in a new, I guess, the world of what our chancellor likes to say, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and be able to succeed in application, or at least experimenting to see what might be applicable there. So that's one focus. And then the other is more, in fact, I'm headed to Seattle I think I leave for the airport in the next couple of hours for the Academy of Management meeting in Seattle. And one of the things we're doing there is a research hackathon. That's a pre-conference event with several folks from all over the world. And so we're going to be talking about some of these transformative learning concepts in relation to the research studies that we're kind of like our breakout rooms here in this example. We have teams of 3 to 4 people working on concepts. The research we're doing where I think transformative learning would come into play is the concept of digital trust. So Tina hires someone to, let's say, put together a piece of furniture she bought from IKEA, the TaskRabbit.com.
Mhm.
Now, the trust she has on this with this individual who did assemble her, I don't know, her chairs and tables, or some other furniture in a wonderful way, and was very efficient. Would that trust translate in other fields of the gig economy? Say that individual is also an Uber driver or an Airbnb landlord or a tenant for Airbnb. So is that trust? Like we have a FICO score for a credit card that goes across all credit cards, regardless, Visa, Discover, MasterCard, so forth. Now that digital trust, or first of all, is that something we can measure? And if so, is that transferable across the gig economy? And or the knowledge economy. So if let's say Jeff and Eric were to hire an individual that has had good or a high rank on the digital trust index, can they then say this individual would be a good associate working with them at UCO? So, and what are some of the constraints to that digital trust is what we're going to be looking at with longitudinal data that had been collected pre and post pandemic with a lot of global virtual teams. So we've done some of the preliminary work. We start out, it's a whole week where after the conference, we'll be working on it. Before the conference, we work on it. And in fact, conference doesn't start till the 5th. So this is a pretty intense, it's almost like a dissertation dive, if you will. Goal being 2 weeks later, we're ready to submit it to a peer-reviewed outlet with the analysis, findings, the implications, and everything done. So we go in there with the lit review, start out with starting to, formulate the hypotheses and then do the relevant tests. So that was what we did in a virtual mode, during the last couple of years. And today we're going to be, well, naturally start tomorrow morning, but today is travel day to get there, and a little social evening dinner for a celebration, and then that's so. The transformation there is normally we have a larger timeline for faculty, right? They usually tend to take, I don't know, semester or 2 or maybe a couple of years for some studies, depending on, again, the complexity of the study. Here, the idea is to come together with the objective of, similar to a newspaper, they have or a magazine, they have a deadline, and granted, those are not empirical articles, but they tend to be in a shorter time frame to get that ready to go to the editor. And the same mindset is at play here. And yeah, if it's not quite ready, half baked, then we work on the elements. We're not going to submit something that's shoddy or incomplete. But the goal being 2 weeks is what we've given ourselves to get it done.
Fascinating. So is this that you can quantitate trustingness or trustworthiness?
Actually, neither. We don't know that. I don't know any of the team members I'm working with, to be honest. This is the first time we've come together. I do know the founder, and he's actually part of our team. I'm sorry? Sorry?
You're trusting
Tina?
that they've done their research.
At this point, I know 2 of them haven't. They actually admitted it, but they're going to do that when they get there. So, and that happens sometimes, what life happens. So I don't want to judge anyone, but the founder of this whole project is on our team. And so he and I have been crunching some of the numbers to kind of see what might be suitable constructs to include in this, because in our data set, we have 3,000 variables. I mean, there's no way we have a model with that many variables in it. It's literally, and I'm not exaggerating, it's over 3,000 variables.
No,
Uh,
Yeah,
so we
this
have
sounds good.
to,
Wide association study in my field. You've got to pick out the variables that actually rise to significance.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the objective for what we're doing. But now, one other point that came to mind is the other teams. See, there's cross learning too, because the other teams would also be presenting. I think that's on Thursday, to kind of show us what they're working on, what might be some feedback we can provide, just from what they present to us, thoughts that come to mind. Hey, have you thought about this research question? That seems interesting. Especially there's one on social network theory, which would be something I've already posted some comments on, because they posted some slides and I thought, hey, you may want to consider this or that. I mean, just based on whatever, again, association. What can we associate that particular study with? But I love this concept, and this is one thought. The other for transformative learning is having this session, right? What we're doing here online. If Jeff and Eric were to take this on a cruise ship, so the 4 modules are on the 4 days of the cruise ship. We sail out of Galveston, close enough to Edmond, Oklahoma. Tina, you and I, you can drive from here to Galveston in probably 5 hours, or fly into Houston and get to Galveston. But the point being, each one of these modules, in-depth discussions and such, could be on the day of the cruise, bringing it all together. Now, I mentioned that because that's how we held this conference we had before the hackathon. And then the thought was, administrators would raise eyebrows, saying, are you really going on a vacation to the Caribbean, or are you going to be conference? Now, one could ask the same question when we are in Seattle. Am I going to be by the Space Needle all day hanging out, or am I going to be in that conference? I think there are 6 different hotels and a convention center for the 4,500 attendees coming to the Academy of Management meeting. Now, how many of those 4,500 are going to be in the sessions they need to be after they present their paper, right? Or their panel or what have you. So it's the same thing. Cost structure was actually lower than the on-land conferences. And we had a cap to, I mean, during the day, yes, there's entertainment on the ship, but I mean, come on, during the day, we were doing our work, and then we would go do the social aspect, and all your meals, everything's taken care of pretty much. So it's easier for the organizer, and so I thought it might be something for transformative thinking for Jeff, Eric, and Stuart to be thinking about. Just a thought for the next cohort, or maybe, or maybe the next step for us, the people that graduate out of this cycle. Now, anyway.
Yeah, I can see cost being an issue for that. One of the things that might relate the ideas that you're focusing on right now about trust and trustworthiness have been brought up in this transformative learning course, in that students we will be putting students into positions where they have to trust one another. We're going to be, part of this is like putting them into small groups, having them share their own connections that they're making. And we have to create a safe, trusting environment. And so we've got students who who come to us with a very low trust, and some who come with a higher trust index. You know, it comes more naturally to them. They've played team sports. They know how to work well with others. Others may have been in a low trust environment at home. I know we have a lot of foster kids who might fall into this category. We have a lot of first time in college, so they don't know how to work with others. And so what can we do to facilitate trust in our students to be transformed?
Right. I think, and Tina, I firmly believe trust has to be earned. So they may come in there with a blank slate and have no preconceived notions about can they or can they not trust us? Or maybe they have something
Mhm.
negative they might have heard.
For each other.
But if we earn their trust, they might think, okay, what I had heard, the rumors or whatnot, are probably not applicable to me or perhaps false. So we're going to give this a fair shake. And, I guess if both sides are able to contribute their piece, by both sides, I mean the faculty side, in contributing to that learning and making that optimal learning experience, and the student doing the homework and the assignments that are expected, then I think we have a happy medium. Now, the part when I know when Jeff, Eric, and Stuart were sharing the introduction this morning, one thought I came across me was that it may not be a broad brushstroke across the students with respect to their expectation or what they want from it. They may not even want to be in that class. It might be a required class and they have zero interest in that. I had one in TWU a long time ago, one of the executive MBA students, and I found out this a little late in the game when the peer evaluations came out, and the peers informed me that he had delegated the work but had not done any of the work besides the delegation and reminders. In fact, Stuart just just texted me saying on the chat that they have something like we discussed planned for our next steps for this transformative learning. But this particular student, what baffled me was when I called him to the office and I expressed concern about his participation in the team. He said, I did what I was supposed to do. I said, supposed to do, okay, and what did you think you were supposed to do? And he said, well, I got the project completed. That was what he thought he had to do. Well, and he said, Dr. Rasangani, I want to be a CEO. I believe of, he had his dad's farm, and his dad had probably told him, son, after me, it's you, president and CEO.
Mhm.
So he said, Dr. Rasangani, do you really think I'm going to be doing any of the work besides making sure the work gets done? So why am I doing this in this project? And I said, well, it's great if that company does well and you're able to be at the, in the position that you seek to. However, you may be a better leader if you had an understanding of the work that you're delegating. And so that skill set is what is my goal, to make sure that each student in the class, and nowhere in the syllabus it states that all you do is delegate and remind people about, I guess he was very hard on them with the deadlines. Wanted it done, he wanted it presented to him, and then he would basically say, okay, what they need to do. So essentially, he just put himself in the role of a leader. Reminded me of that Catch Me If You Can, where I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio who kind of did that in the classroom, just assumed authority, which was great. But again, he didn't really learn much out of this student. So I told him, I don't think, he said, well, graduation is in a couple of weeks. I've already sent out the invitations. I said, you may want to retract those because this is a required course. It's kind of like a capstone. And the best you're going to get, even if you did it well and everything else, is a D. And he said he's going to escalate it. I said, by all means. And you can take it all the way to the Board of Regents. There's no way I'm going to change that grade. And that's final. And I just showed him the door. Said, thank you for your time. He essentially was, he did not pursue his threat. He did not dispute that grade. And he just asked me if in the next project, if he could do some of it virtually, because apparently he had some plans, travel plans, as part of his celebration of his graduation. So I said, well, you can certainly enjoy that graduation vacation, but then yes, you can do this virtually, but you have, I will be making sure we have, and that's a lesson I told him. I learned that lesson from this. Have feedback from the peers every week. Now, from then on, I said, I want feedback, not just his team, every team. They send feedback every week, kind of like a agile manifesto, right? The scrum sessions, they happen every day. Here it was a weekly. So I would be more, I guess, up to date on what's really happening, because I was just collecting this peer evaluation at the end of the project, where it was little I could do to, change the outcome for this particular student. And in his mind,
Yeah.
I mean, I gave him credit for being upfront with me about his goal. He said, the reason I'm getting an MBA is because, it kind of is, it's more like a I don't know, a sticker that, that you understand management and leadership. And I know how to get it done. And he said he even contemplated outsourcing it if these peers didn't quite deliver. So I said, well, that
Instead
would
of doing the work himself. Wow.
Yeah, I said that would have probably gone to the academic honesty committee. I'm glad you didn't do that. But at the same time, I said, yeah,
Definitely.
we're going to make sure the others are given credit for this. And hi, Dr. Kinney. I see Dr. Kinney just joined us.
Oh,
Hi.
hello. My
So in the
partner
last
just
couple
left.
of
Sorry.
No, that's
No.
fine. We should probably change, answer the question, has your identity as an educator changed at all since you began this course?
Is that a question for Dr. Kinney?
Sure.
Oh,
If
okay.
you're
I guess
okay.
I'm joining you guys today.
First one's
Yeah, has your identity changed?
Has my identity changed? I feel I believe my identity. Let me back up for a minute. Okay. So for me, transformative learning is something I had been interested in prior to this course, because again, my background is music, it's my PhD. That means I've had numerous music lessons where we have a mentor-mentee relationship where it asks you to self-reflect on what you as a performer or as the composer or singer, how is something working or not working? And then of course, and my struggle has always been, and it's still always going to be a struggle when you have a class of 30 or 40 in a classroom setting, and how to implement this. And so this course has actually changed my identity, as in that this is a correct way of teaching. This is a valuable way of teaching. Some individuals say this is not worth it. And for me, this is validating in the sense that this is worth it, because we want to produce students who will not always agree with me, who will come up with a new solution or better answer, or even a differing viewpoint, but at the same time can reason and rationalize that argument and that perspective in a sense that it makes sense. It's a fully fledged thought and argument, or even just a new way of doing things. And for me, that's kind of how my identity as an educator is changing. It's more of not just, I'm only in faculty development, I'm only in music. It's more of, no, my role is to be an educator so that students can come out critically thinking regardless of the subject material, and producing also faculty members who will eventually have a similar goal of that. So that's how my identity has changed. Yeah. What about
Thank you so
you,
much. Welcome
Michael?
back, everybody. Yeah, well, thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. We hope that your time in groups was helpful and generative for you. And so now we're going to open up to large group sharing. Jeff, did we just lose Jeff? Oh, there you are. You moved around on my screen. I was like, where did you go?
Yeah. Our Zoom experience over the past 3 years has always, it seems for me anyway, trying to identify where people are on the grid, because coming back from breakouts, it's always something different. Just as to kick us off with the large group sharing, what we are hopeful is that in your breakout room discussions, there might have been some themes, some ideas that you coalesced around that folks might want to share about, but really this is a time to share with peers, with your colleagues, realizations, things that you have come to understand or to think differently about as a result of going through the course. So we'll, as Eric said, just open it up for volunteers who might want to talk a bit about what you talked about in your breakout rooms.
Well, our group shifted pretty quickly into the relationship between what we're learning in this module and trauma-informed educational practices, and understanding that our students and our faculty have been through a collective trauma. And when I thought about that grid at the very beginning of this, I'm having trouble busting my students out of the anger, anxiety, shame quadrant to get them where they need to be for transformation. But it's not just my students, it's the faculty. And many of us are not even understanding that that's where we are. So that's why that self-reflection piece is so important. We need to do it for ourselves, and we need to also model that for students if we're going to promote any sort of movement out of that quadrant.
I'm curious if you could say a little bit more. Did your group have ideas, strategies? Like, are there certain kinds of self-reflective activities? Have you been using those, and what's been the impact of those? I mean, is it helping?
Do you want me? So, okay. So I'm actually the trauma-informed instruction person. And so when I was sharing that I felt as I started this, that concept came out of K-12, and I was a K-12 professional for many years as an OT before transitioning to higher ed. So when pandemia hit, I just naturally transitioned into this. It kind of just triggered my response, and just for myself, for other faculty, for my clinical educators, for my students, for everyone. And so as I began to do this work, I found that it came together because the main point is knowing where your learners are and what direction you can then go based on that. So the reflective piece from a faculty perspective is really understanding where I am. And we actually talked about that different times in the past 2 years, for example, my answer would have been very different. Today, if you ask me where I'm at, I'm feeling energized. I finished some coursework things. I'm feeling good. A year ago this time, I wasn't feeling that at all. I felt in a completely, and I wasn't ready for fall. And it's very reflective in how I performed in fall, because I didn't allow myself to reflect on if I was ready. And so that's connects with this quite a bit, is recognizing your own trauma, and then recognizing that pretty much everybody you know at this point has at least had one, if not multiple layers impacting their neurological responses to be able to learn. And so that's getting down to some really big nitty gritty, but literally neurologically, where are you even able to take in new knowledge? So I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing about that concept. I'm assuming that at all of your institutions, there might be populations of students who, because of their living circumstances, their other aspects of their lives, when they come to university, they come from an environment where they are indeed dealing with trauma, whether it's because, they might be food insecure. We have students here at our own university who are food insecure. There are certainly homeless students in colleges in America, and those are extreme examples, but even family dynamics that students still bring with them into the classroom. Shannon, it's a wonderful commentary about how a self-reflective approach can attenuate faculty to understanding whether they themselves are ready, but also the readiness, the readiness aspect of that lives within their students for learning that particular day.
Jeff, I think we had really nice conversation in our group, and I would like to invite Anastasia or Laura to share. That's how we agreed in a way. So I'm sure they'll explain better than I do. Go ahead, ladies, please. Anastasia, please go ahead.
Well, I think we were talking about how the pandemic has impacted everybody and how we've all felt it around the world, and how we've all come to adjust, and we've seen that we've all been adjusting in real time, and has kind of made all of us live this transformational learning in real time. And we've all had to adapt and process all these things differently in real time. I think that's a good summation of kind of our talk.
Yeah, thank you. I guess so. I think we agreed that we should we get our own transformation and transformative learnings through experience that we have gone through during the pandemic. So one way or another, we had to do something and to get out of this. It's not only us, because I was in the US at that time. When I came back after pandemic to Europe, this part of the world, I realized it's the same thing. People have been going through the same situation. When we have discussions with our colleagues from Southeast Asia or Australia, the same thing. So people all have gone through these challenges. And it brought us to think some new ways and methods of aligning and combining the different modes of teaching, delivery, teaching and learning to our courses and programs, so that we were really innovative and by default as a lecturer or as an institution. That boosted, that's for sure. And also I think there is a good opportunity that this post-pandemic really makes things for all to learn from each other. So I think what we are doing here is really meaningful and useful for all of us and for other community that are struggling all around the globe. They may not be lucky as we do. So those disadvantaged regions and those who do not have any tools to do this, maybe that could help them to speed up and to cope up and really align themselves to the existing situation and to have a better graduates for all of us, isn't it? So that was the outcome I could summarize. Thank you.
And Laura, did you have more to add to that?
I think that they really covered a lot of what we talked about. Really, I do think maybe adding to a little bit about what Christine kind of was hitting to also, one of the things that we did talk about was kind of like student buy-in. We kind of talked a little bit about that, and you know, how to kind of involve our students in the process. We talked a lot about you know, whether our students liked what we were doing, like this change and stuff, and whether or not that was, I mean, I guess I'm being crude here, but whether or not that was important. But because what I think, at least in our experience, you know, kind of what we're finding is they don't necessarily like it, but it's bringing good outcomes. And so we kind of talked about the perspective that, you know, our children, they would like to have candy for dinner every day, but they can't. They have to have their vegetables, right? And that's what's better for them. And what we're finding is that this is better for our students' learning. And so they may not like it, but they can't have candy every day, right? They have to have their vegetables. And so you're kind of putting it in that perspective. And so one of the things that we did talk about was, there's kind of a growing body of knowledge that if you explain the rationales to the students, if you bring them into the process of why we're doing this and how this helps them and that kind of thing, that it kind of helps, they appreciate that and can kind of start to see how this is better for them, and it kind of brings some buy-in. So we did kind of talk about that a little bit. It maybe doesn't help with it maybe doesn't help them not be with the cognitive processes. They still are maybe overburdened, but it might help still bring a little bit of buy-in to where they're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this. Because you hear a lot about, I don't learn this way, I can't learn like this, I don't, but you can and you will. You just have to be brought into the process a little bit.
Well, and like I gave examples of, like, I have a lot of syllabus clauses that sometimes come off as arbitrarily mean. Like you have to contest any grades within 5 days of them being released. And that's not out of arbitrarily meanness. It's because then I know they're actually going and looking at the grades instead of waiting till finals to then go and look at everything. And so that way I know, because the homeworks all build on each other. And if they're not going to review my comments, they're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over, because I teach quantitative subjects. So if they're making the same mathematical mistakes, they're going to keep making the same mathematical mistakes. And so I've gotten to where, like Laura said, that literature, I've gotten to where I explain to them, look, this isn't meanness, there is a reason for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will not necessarily get buy-in from everybody, but I think it's balancing that what they need and what they want, in the hopes that we can reach them and get some buy-in so they can look at the material differently and maybe break down some of those barriers. So we talked about that a lot.
Yeah, so this raises a good, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
This just raises a question for the whole group is, can you do TL without, student motivation? Because so much of ed literature is like, oh, student needs to be intrinsically motivated, and that's how the deepest learning happens. But what I kind of hear the conversation here is maybe and this is supported by research on active learning, that students may not like active learning strategies as much as kind of come and just sit and listen to the teacher, even though they do perform better. So it's like this question of where and how does motivation fit into transformative learning?
Yeah, and that was exactly, we're thinking alike, Eric, because I was going to mention research that shows that students think they're learning more from lecture, but it turns out they actually learn more from active learning, even if they go in thinking, why am I doing this? I don't like working, just let the teacher tell me stuff. So yeah, this idea and the point about helping students understand the rationale for critical reflection for TL is definitely a big piece of things.
And we also discussed about student satisfaction, isn't it? And the feedback, the survey that they had. So whether they are engaged or not, because we need to really get them one way or another to shift this from teaching to learning paradigm, as always said. If the leadership, the lecturer, or the management does take the feedback into account through students' satisfaction surveys and then make some adjustments and improvements, then it will work and they will feel more motivated. From my experience in the QA, when we do evaluation, students keep saying that we do these surveys every semester, but it doesn't really work, and we get nothing changed afterwards. So that's PT. I think we have to change this as well. I agree with you all. Thank you.
For my students, and this did come up in our group discussion, was how it was finding that motivation for students to actually want to engage and for them to actually try to buy in. And sometimes it comes, especially if you're not in the sciences, there is this cultural effect here in the US where there's this idea that the humanities mean nothing, arts mean nothing. You're signing on to a world of poverty, and that I don't have to repeat every single thing. We kind of already know. And trying to find that connection of why is it important to develop these skills, and what does that mean in a humanities or a music course or a theater course or art history. And making those, for me, what I found was really always successful is pulling out current contemporary topics and making those interdisciplinary connections and saying this is why. And also bringing into the subjects that we're looking ahead, from automation, the idea that certain jobs that we are really lucrative now aren't necessarily going to be lucrative in 20, 30 years when they're in the middle or towards the end of their careers. And other questions of also things like ethics and reasoning of why you can do some things and not other things. And trying to creating those kind of connections with contemporary topics for students and things that make them matter, things that they're passionate about. For example, in music, they enjoy music, but maybe they're not passionate in like understanding who they're giving their money to when it comes to performing rights organizations or where they're streaming their music. Kind of bringing in those topics of, well, your independent artist that you're championing by streaming on Spotify, for example, is not getting much money from that. They actually would get more money if you actually bought a physical album or a physical CD or actually attending one of their concerts, and having conversations on why is that significant, because it's the question of let's take an investigation of where that money trail goes to and who gets a cut of what, who actually owns the music you're listening to. And students are always shocked at how relevant some of their other areas that they're interested in lead into some of these other subject matters that they aren't entirely aware, whether it's about corporatization or civil rights or even politics of any given election year. That is, for me, for my students, tend to be a huge buy-in. And then with faculty development is a question of how do you get students motivated? It's, well, you have to think like them. What are they into? And it's not, oh, they like certain type of music, they like a certain type of TV show. It's beyond that. It's they're here to feel like they know that the money that they're spending, which is astronomical here in the US, is worth the effort and the debt, the possible decades of debt that they will be going into to get that education. And by making those connections and saying that this is why this is important, and this is why we're making these connections, and these are the skill sets, and having that type of investment for the students and communicating that you're just as invested in their education as them, that in my anecdotal experience tends to motivate students a lot more into this active learning assignments. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much. We do have one more group left to kind of share, but before we did, Dr. Bashir, did you have something you want to contribute? I know that members of your group had spoke, but I wanted to give you a space.
Yes, I agree with what has been said to a great extent. It's the idea of the last 2 years and how they shifted our own perspective as educators to the whole education procedure, the teaching and learning process. And I think it was there, but it wasn't that tangible. It created that atmosphere of sympathy. I have set of rules from my institution that deadlines to be met, the requirements for a course, etc. But again, the type of circumstances that apply to me in my personal life, these are the same that happen to my students. So that shifted our focus, let's say, on what is really important. Is it the deadline for an assignment? Or is it that a student did turn in the assignment after all? Is it that when the assignment was turned in, or was it how it was, or what was the benefit that the student gained from doing that assignment? So it is from the formal set of rules that we used to follow back in the day, I guess. Now, in the last 2 years, I think the highlight is not to what, but what is the outcome of it and how it was done, because it was a tough time for everyone. I'm in the other part of the world, I'm the UAE, but it was globally a tough time for everyone. This is, I think that was the major shift or change that we suffered. Yes.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question. So have you found, as well, not that we're post-pandemic, because I know at least in the US there's another wave coming, but have you found that your organization or institutions have continued to maintain that shift, or is it kind of reverting back to what it was before?
To a great extent, yes. To a great extent, because there remains that the idea is we're back to normal now. However, a student 2 years ago is the same student today. So I cannot just tell a student that that was good back then and now it is here. Now, this culture of sympathizing, reaching out to each other, checking up on each other, this is, let's say, one of the greatest things that happened now. Now we can tell that what is wrong, why is a student late, why is, and I agree with Dr. Christian, Dr. Shannon, yes, reaching out, checking out on them, yes, this is what we have learned. And it is done on, I think, I might say, on an individual level, faculty to faculty, but institution-wise, I'm afraid not, because in the end, you know, there are certain set of guidelines or rules that we have to follow, and we cannot deviate that much from them when it comes to from policy makers and those who are in the administrative part. But as educators, yes, we have all of that, and I think we're lucky there. We have that freedom to like bend rules a little bit, as long as the outcome is in the best interest of all. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we just have one other group. Tina, Michael, if you'd like to share.
Yeah,
Michael, do
Tina?
you want to go ahead?
I guess we called on each other at the same time. All right. I guess certainly who am I to argue with Tina? So the main thoughts here were on reflections both for both stakeholders here, the faculty and the students, vis-a-vis the environment we operate in. I guess that ecosystem that was referred to by Eric when he pointed out some of the agenda for our transformative learning. We bounced around several ideas, looking at application, all from, I think Tina talked about applying it to her biology and science courses, life sciences, and how this could be very relevant to her students to be able to associate ideas and see the relevance of the concepts to day-to-day things that are science, that science exhibits itself in, and that would help reinforce the learning. And then I think we both agreed that deep learning would be, I guess, one of the objectives to help them take this to the rest of their lives, and regardless of the career they choose, and they're able to apply and succeed. We use different examples on how that has manifested itself, but primarily the idea being the self-reflection, the application, the key takeaways for better, deeper quality learning. So that's in a nutshell what we talked about. Hope that helps all of us as we go forward. We also had some, I guess, ideas that may be considered heretic at this point, but without sounding like a hereticist. The idea was to look at the next steps, which I think Stuart has assured us that there will be some next steps for this cohort. And my suggestion was to put this on a cruise ship out of Galveston, since granted, the Brazilians might have to make their way up for the Caribbean cruise, or whoever is coming from, say even from the UAE, Wafa, that would be a nice trip. So the 4-day cruise, and I guess the learning, you have a captive audience, right? Parking is not going to be a problem for them. And the catering's already taken care of, so Eric and Stuart won't have to worry about that as co-pilots. And if you don't like the entertainment, well, hey, you always got lessons to read. But that would be, I guess, part of the social aspect. But the learning, I think we were pleasantly surprised that this was the Association of International Business that had this out of Fort Lauderdale. We sailed in the Western Caribbean, and it was less expensive than the on-land options. And by the time you add in the hotel and meals and such, and so anyway, this was just the idea we bounced around. I see Eric smiling. I think maybe, hopefully, he'll be looking at one of the cruise lines post-pandemic to see if we can get on board. All aboard. Aye, aye, Captain. And that's about it. Thank you.
Very good. Well, we appreciate, sharing some of the topics that you discussed, and this self-reflection as we go through as a learning cohort is always very good, because the meta-awareness that is such an important part of critical self-reflection applies to us as faculty also. And many of the topics that each of you have debriefed on, if you will, all align so well with transformative learning. But I would make a point that I don't think it's the case that all of these topics that were just brought up in our large group discussion would align with, for example, the old teaching paradigm. Because this idea, for example, Wafa, that you had shared about one of the results of the pandemic being that there is a bit more empathy, a bit more tending to each other, because we all lived through what the pandemic wrought. In the teaching paradigm, the faculty member pretty much doesn't worry about what's going on with the students. The students either pass the test or not. Thank you very much, and that's all I have to deal with. In the TL paradigm, though, what we've just talked about and what we've discovered about ourselves as we think about how what we're doing right now in our classes fits within the TL frame is really important. Self-reflection as a faculty member, of course, is extremely important. And realizing that we're at time, let me simply give a quick look forward, because in course 3, and some of you may have already begun it, it is the module where there's a strong focus on assessment, kinds of assessment, and especially assessment regarding transformative learning and critical reflection. But we do include, as we try to do in all of these courses, actionable tips, items, information to share so that you can try this stuff out in your courses, which is the absolute most important thing. This is a doing as well as a learning activity. So we hope that you might have been motivated along the way to try some punctuated lecture or some card sorts to do some backward design for your own course, or coming up with the assessments, evaluations of the types of assessments that you're learning. So anything else from anyone for the good of the cause?